Here is what the public record shows. In April 2025, Canadians went to the polls and elected a minority parliament. The governing Liberals came up 3 seats short of a majority. That was not an accident. That was a decision. Canadians voted for a government with limits on its power, and they voted for the strongest opposition in Canadian history to hold it accountable. By April 2026, that minority was gone. Not because of another election, not because Canadians changed their minds, because 5 opposition MPs crossed the floor to join the governing party. And 3 by-elections finished the job. So here's the question this video is going to answer. When the tools built to hold a government accountable are systematically removed, 1 committee seat at a time, what exactly is left? Let us go through what actually happened piece by piece. The 2025 election left the Liberals with 169 seats, 3 short of a majority. Within months, opposition MPs began crossing the floor. Chris D'Entremont in November, Michael Ma in December, Matt Genero in February, Lori Eidlaut from the NDP in March, Marilyn Gladu in April. 5 MPs in 6 months. Not one of their constituencies was asked to ratify the switch through a by-election. Canadians were asked what they thought of this. The answer was clear. Only 26% said a floor-crossing MP should be allowed to serve out their term under new party colors. 3 in 4 Canadians said those MPs should either face a by-election or sit as independents. Meanwhile, the Westminster parliamentary system, the same system Canada inherited, had never before seen a government move from minority to majority status mid-parliament entirely through floor crossings and by-elections without a general election. Not in Canada, not anywhere else in the Westminster world. Worth noting, countries with similar parliamentary traditions have rules requiring floor-crossing MPs to stand down and face voters. Canada does not. Hours after the April by-elections were confirmed, the Liberals used their new majority to pass a motion restructuring every committee in the House. Every committee now has a Liberal majority. The cameras at certain committee meetings can now be switched off. Transcripts can be stopped. Motions to demand documents or compel testimony can be voted down. That happened on the same day the new MPs took their seats. By comparison, the United Kingdom requires any MP accepting a position of profit under the Crown to seek re-election in their constituency, a tradition going back 4 centuries. Canada removed that requirement in 1931. The Public Accounts Committee, the Ethics Committee, and the Government Operations Committee are now majority Liberal. These are the committees that examine where tax dollars go, who got the contracts, whether the rules were followed. These are not my opinions. This is what the public record shows. The record shows that the government's own finance minister is currently scheduled to testify before the Ethics Committee about a potential conflict of interest. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne's partner, Anne-Marie Godet, is vice president at Alto, the Crown corporation responsible for the proposed $90 billion high-speed rail project between Toronto and Quebec City. A project funded through the very budgets that Champagne introduced and defended in Parliament. The cost to Canadians, a minister who was asked to recuse himself from decisions involving a project his partner works for, quietly, in September, before the connection was publicly reported, not disclosed until questions emerged. The Ethics Commissioner cleared Champagne of a formal breach. The question of whether the rules are strong enough is a separate conversation, and that conversation was supposed to happen at committee. The record shows that the same spring 2026 economic update that contains that $90 billion rail project also allocates $3 billion for international climate finance. The cost to Canadians, $3 billion going to international climate funds at a time when the federal deficit has grown to $65 billion. That is more than double the $31 billion deficit inherited from the previous government. The record shows that the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ, was co-founded by Mark Carney in April 2021 and described as a $130 trillion coalition to achieve net zero finance. By early 2025, all 6 of Canada's largest banks had left. Major American banks had left. The organization restructured, dropping its core requirement that members align investments with the Paris Agreement. The cost to Canadians, a policy architecture that Carney championed that now directs $3 billion in public funds to an international framework that lost its founding membership and abandoned its founding principles. The record shows that Carney claimed in 2021 that Brookfield Asset Management's $600 billion portfolio was carbon neutral, a claim he retracted within weeks under pressure from climate experts who called it greenwash. The cost to Canadians: a prime minister who entered office on a platform of climate credibility, whose central climate finance initiative restructured under mass departures, and who personally walked back his own flagship climate accounting claim. Wrong, not according to me. According to their own words and their own record. What was said on the day the committee restructuring motion passed, that majority governments have always held majorities on committees, and this reflects a long tradition. What that means in plain language, as I read it, a government that started as a minority became a majority through 5 floor crossings and 3 byelections without asking voters, and then, on the same afternoon its new members took their seats, used that majority to take control of the committees built to investigate the government. The tradition being referenced is majority governments controlling committees. The tradition that has no precedent is everything that came before that sentence. I offer this purely as observation. 3 seats short of a majority. That is how Canadians voted in April 2025. 5 floor crossings. That is how the opposition count was reduced between November 2025 and April 2026. 74% of Canadians, the share who said floor crossing MPs should face a by-election or sit as independents, not simply switch parties. $65 billion, the projected federal deficit after the 2026 spring economic update. More than double the $31 billion the previous government left behind. $25 billion borrowed from the national debt to fund the Canada Strong Fund Sovereign Wealth Fund, a fund proposed by a government running a $65 billion deficit. $3 billion allocated for international climate finance in the same spring update, directed to the same global finance framework whose membership collapsed in 2024 and 2025. $90 billion, the estimated cost of the Alto high-speed rail project, the Crown Corporation, where the finance minister's partner holds a vice presidency. That is not a list of abstractions. That is a Tuesday for a lot of Canadians. A parent sitting at the kitchen table working out what the $65 billion deficit means for the programs their family depends on. A small business owner wondering how much of the $25 billion sovereign wealth fund will reach them, and how much will go to a short list of government-chosen projects. A renter doing the math on what $3 billion in international climate finance means for the housing file that was supposed to be the priority. The numbers are large. The distance between those numbers and an ordinary paycheck is larger. Every other G7 country lives under the same pressures. So why is Canada running a $65 billion deficit while building a sovereign wealth fund on borrowed money? Now, some in the media will tell you that you are being too harsh, too combative, too focused on procedure. Insert whatever word they are using this week to describe Canadians who are paying attention. But Canadians who have been watching this closely already know what the public record shows. You are not wrong. You are not extreme. You have simply been doing the reading. The floor crossings are documented. The committee restructuring is documented. The ethics questions around the finance minister are documented. The collapse of the GFAN's membership is documented. All of it is in the public record. None of it requires conspiracy theories. It simply requires reading the minutes. Every source used in this video is verified and linked in the pinned comment below. Check them yourself. That is not a suggestion. That is exactly what you should do with anything you watch, including this. Tell me in the comments, when did you first realize something was off? Was it the floor crossing coverage? Was it the committee motion passing the same day the new MPs sat down? Was it the $65 billion deficit in the same breath as a $25 billion sovereign wealth fund? I want to hear from you. There is something worth saying clearly before this video ends. Parliamentary oversight is not a technicality. It is not a procedural argument between people who spend too much time in Ottawa. It is the mechanism through which public money gets accounted for. It is how contracts get examined. It is how the questions that do not get answered in a press conference eventually get answered somewhere. Committees that can compel testimony, order documents, and study spending without the government voting every motion down. Those are not a gift to the opposition. They are a service to every Canadian whose taxes built the programs being examined. There is a version of this country where that accountability is treated as routine, where a finance minister answers the committee's questions without a months-long filibuster in the way, where a floor-crossing MP faces their constituents and earns their seat under the new party's banner, where a sovereign wealth fund is funded by resource revenues, not deficit spending, where $3 billion for international climate finance goes through the same scrutiny as any other line item. That version of Canada is not a fantasy. It is a description of how the tools already on the books are supposed to work. The challenge right now is not that Canadians do not understand what is happening. The data suggests they understand it quite well. 3 in 4 Canadians said floor-crossing MPs should face voters. That is not a fringe position. That is a broad consensus looking for somewhere to land. What Canadians are building through conversations like this one, through new media, through the questions they are asking at the dinner table and in comment sections, is a public record of what they expected and what they received. That record does not disappear. It accumulates. The committees may be restructured. The cameras may be switched off, but Canadians know how to keep score. They have been doing it for a long time. The data shows where we are right now. Canadians will decide where we go next.